Why, hello there. So, Diablo 4, as we all know, is launching pretty soon, and this is my build so far that I'm going to show and talk about and do whatever. Now, disclaimer, I am not a deep theory crafter, okay? Not necessarily because I don't want to be, but because I just don't have the fucking time. I seriously do not have the time, not with work and a job and whatever, it just, family, it just doesn't happen. But I can read stuff and then I can make a build around it and I can take what I've seen from other people and put it together and blah blah blah. So, you know, the the basic layout may come from like the basic Paragon board comes from elsewhere, but the points are mine. I spent the points. I spent the points in the builds here. I chose the aspects or whatever based on what I think might be good, whatever. And there's still a lot of questions, but I just want to go over what I've come up with so far and some little variations on it for leveling and whatever. Okay, so this is a burn sorcerer build, obviously. Okay, so we're going Firebolt, blah, 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 2 points into Firebolt. I actually can move a point from Firebolt now that I think about it. Well, isn't that just a smarty pants move? Um, let's do that one. Okay, anyway, so Firebolt, obviously. Um, right off the bat, here's a build variation. There's a build variation where I don't include Firebolt. I mean, obviously you have to put points into it, but I don't put it on my bar because we run all cooldowns and Firewall. But whether or not that's actually viable, because I don't know how mana regen works yet. So if mana regen is to the point where, hey, this feels great and you can spam Firewall and whatever, then you probably won't need Firebolt. But if you need a filler, then you're going to have to take Firebolt, it is what it is. Um, we've got potent warding here just for some defense and some resistances and whatever. It's meh. You got to put points into something, right? I mean, what else can you put points into? I guess I can get more mana. That doesn't seem. It just seems like core skills. I'm not even casting any core skills, so potent warding just seems like the best choice to me. Maybe devastation is better. Who knows? It's whatever. It's a possible variation. So we get over to the defensive part, and we're taking Flame Shield. This is debatable which one you want. Again, if mana is a problem, might go with mana cost reduction. But Flame will only last for freaking 2 seconds anyway. So, I mean, how much benefit are you actually going to get out of 2 seconds of free mana? Not a whole hell of a lot. So I would rather heal my life if I happen to be missing life. Okay, so obviously teleport, kind of a staple. Now, I know teleport is a staple on our builds, but I kind of wish it wasn't. And the reason I wish that it wasn't is because we only have 6 skill slots, and to have one locked to teleport permanently no matter what build you're playing, it feels too much like Diablo 3, where 4 out of your 6 skills are fucking magic weapon and flame spark or spark flint or whatever the hell that spell is, and then teleport, and it's just like half your bar is always the same buttons no matter what build you're playing, and that's boring. So I don't like that aspect of it, but it is teleport, so you gotta freaking take it. So enhanced teleport, damage reduction, shimmering target, whatever. Lightning build obviously for the other one, but I mean, okay. And then ice armor. So we have 3 defensive skills, and why is that? Because Sork is this particular build is cooldown based, largely because we only have one main casters or one main spender. So we take ice armor, we take mana regen, and then we take mystical ice armor for the vulnerability. Now, I don't know. I think this is the best choice overall, and unless you're specifically even this, that sucks. So, especially if you're in groups, I mean, this is a point you can spend elsewhere if you're solo because wizards don't have a lot of ways to make enemies vulnerable except Frost Nova, but that's it. So, it's not really a worthwhile point. However, I plan to play in groups a lot. So, because I'm playing in groups a lot, and other classes are good at applying vulnerable, you can maybe do some things with Mystic Ice Armor and have it be a benefit to you. Over here in the Conjurer, I had a build variation where I was taking Hydra, but Hydra got nerfed to fuck, so it doesn't look like I'm going to take Hydra. It's unfortunate. There is an offshoot Conjurer build that I've heard of that uses Hydra, but it's like a specific Conjurer build and it would change literally everything. You can't just... I mean, now for leveling purposes, maybe you want Hydra, because it's not bad. It's mana-less damage, but... And there's burn, and you can get, if you get an aspect early on, like the two-headed aspect, then you definitely want to go Hydra because you get 2 Hydra heads. But, assuming that doesn't happen and you have no control over it, you don't really want to be running Hydra. So we've got Precision Magic, which lucky hit chance. Now, the endgame build has Meteor in it, and Meteors is based on lucky hit chance. So obviously you want Precision Magic to get your lucky hit chance up. And then I have one in Align the Elements, which, because I don't know if it still works this way, but at least during the first beta, I didn't get a chance to look at it during Slam. Probably should have, but anyway, um, while you had a barrier active, this didn't activate. So basically, as long as you kept your barriers up and you were getting hit, when you were getting hit, that is, this stacked up to 40%, and then you just had a flat 40% damage reduction. My guess is it doesn't work like that anymore, because that was fucking overpowered as shit. Of course, you also can't keep permanent barriers up anymore, so there is that. And then we got protection over here, which using a cooldown grants 30% of your maximum life as barrier. So what do we have? We have 3 cooldowns so far. Yes, we do. Okay. So then we've got down here for the mastery, we've got Meteor maxed out with Enhanced Meteor and Immobilize. 30% faster, who cares about that? Then we've got Inner Flame. So this is where we really start spending points, is over here. We've got Inner Flame for 9% damage while you're healthy, and you should always be healthy because you have potions in your barriers, hopefully. 30% increased critical strike damage against burning enemies, so your enemies are always going to be burning if you're using Firewall, right? Well, okay, so there you go. And then if they're immobilized, this is increased to 75%, which is nuts. So that's one reason why we get the immobilization. And if you're partied with a druid who can also immobilize shit, well, you can see why I like grouping, because there's these little synergies with other people. Like druids immobilize a lot of crap, and that feeds right into this. And then like rogues and druids make things vulnerable, and that feeds right into the other things. So I like groups. I think it adds more dynamic to the game, and I like that. And then we have Crippling Flames, which gives us a chance to immobilize shit, and it's doubled when you're healthy. So again, we should be healthy all the time, or close to all the time. And then we've got our mainstay, which is Firewall, which creates Wall of Flames. Now, I am absolutely ecstatic that Firewall is actually good in this game, because in Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, Firewall's not that good. Especially Diablo 1. I think there was a different spell in Diablo 1. It's been so long since I played it, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head anymore. But I think there was like a moving firewall, and that really wasn't a thing either. Because what you wanted was Fireball and then Elemental, which was like a homing missile fireball that looked cool. I just had to never use that in a future game. Maybe I should tell them about that. But anyway, we've got Firewall. We've got enemies take increased burning damage while standing in Firewall. And then we've got either a mana regen choice or burning for 3 seconds after leaving Firewall. Now, you should always be... Like, my thing is, with the Mastery, which we'll talk, or with the Enchantment, there should be a lot of Firewalls going off, as long as it's not like a boss fight. So, you shouldn't really need this, because enemies are always going to be standing in the Firewall. On the other hand, again, I don't know how mana regen works yet. So if mana regen, like if you need the mana regen, then I think this is good, because you should have a bunch of firewalls up all the time and get the full benefit. But if we don't end up needing that, then obviously we switch the point over to this, because extra mana regen is useless. And if mobs are moving around like the stupid world boss, then, this is probably more useful. Then we get over here to our 4th cooldown, which is Inferno. Now you can switch this to Frost Nova if you want to, um, but I like it because it pulls enemies to its center, and your pyromancy spells cost no mana, and it actually lasts, you know, 8 seconds versus 2, so you can actually get some benefit out of that no mana cost. So that's why I'm going with that. But and again, I think there's a build variation where if the mana regen is great, you can end up um, dropping Firebolt from your build, even though you still have to put points in it, which is what it is. And then you can get both Inferno and Frost Nova, and that would cost us taking a couple of points out of a couple other skills like this, and 1 point out of protection, and 1 point out of something else. Probably this. No, wait, that already had 2 points. Whatever. I had a build variation with it. Okay, and then we've got Fiery Surge, which burning increases your mana. Killing a burning enemy increases your mana regeneration, which is great because if you're fighting a lot of mobs, then blah 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 blah, your mana regen you always have it up. That's good. And then you got Endless Pyre, so increased burn damage, and then you got Warmth. Now, just for some health regen. I don't know if this is actually needed or not, but it's pretty much the only way Sork has to regen health outside of potions, so you might as well put a point in there, right? Plus, there's an interaction with aspects that I'm not sure whether it works or not, but there's an aspect that when you heal for over your maximum life, you get a barrier. So if this counts as giving you that healing, that's another barrier activation, but I don't know that it works that way yet. And then over here we've got Isu's Ferocity, which critical strike chance against enemies below 50% life. Killing an enemy with a critical strike gives you both these bonuses. So yeah, that's pretty good. So let's go over to gear and skills. So in the weapon, obviously we want damage over time from your amethyst. I chose barrier generation. I don't know if this is the best choice. I guess you could go ruby maximum life, which might end up being better. Or, I mean, healing received, that's kind of meh. So it's really between barrier generation and maximum life. I chose barrier generation. Now the jewelry, obviously it's whatever the hell you need. I don't think we'll need armor, but it's whatever the hell you need to max your resistances out. So I just chose all resist now for the sake of simplicity, but this is going to be variable depending on your other gear, obviously. So main skills: teleport, ice armor, flame shield, frost nova. Well, I changed around the points over there, but that's just had the point. Inferno, and then, like I said, if we don't end up needing fireball in the end game, then we swap it over to frost nova, and then we have 5 cooldowns and firewall. Okay. And then our enhancements over here for end game are going to be firewall, which enemies take burning damage, they spawn more firewalls, which is good. And then meteor, which lucky hit has chance for meteors to fall, and that activates a bunch of bonuses and blah 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 blah. Now, while you're leveling, obviously, I wouldn't recommend going meteor lucky hit because you're not going to have all the shit. You're not going to have the aspects or whatever that make it work. So instead of meteor, we're going to throw our points over into fireball while leveling. And of course, we're going to pick up fireball blah, 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 first while leveling. And fireball is broken in groups. The enchantment works for anybody in your group that kills a mob, or at least that's how it was in the slam. I don't know if they've changed it. They probably should. Of course, then that makes it useless in a group, so who knows what they'll do. But anyway, right now, the enchantment, which is when you kill an enemy, they explode in a fireball for 50% of its damage. This works whenever anybody in your group kills something. That's broken as fuck. But it's wonderful for groups. So every group is going to want to Sork, expecting the fireball, especially for leveling. Now, late game, you probably won't need it, and we're going to switch over to Meteor once we get all the stuff going for Lucky Hit. But it'll be Fireball first, and then we'll swap over into Meteor. So, like I said, there's a little bit of variance here as to whether or not you need Firebolt in the end game for filler, or whether or not we can just spam Firewall. So, aspects. hat, hands down, is Harlequin Crest. Now, if you don't have Harlequin Crest, then there's some other stuff that we can do with it, uh, depending on how things go. So we could have, where is it? Most of them I've already got. 20% increase, nah. Frostbite, protecting. Okay, so we'd have to swap around some other shit to get me to show you the things. But anyway, this is the current aspects I'm thinking of for the end game. And this is probably subject to change because, again, we don't know how things like mana regen work. But aspect of fortune, your lucky hit chance is increased by 10 to 20% while you have a barrier active. So obviously that's wonderful for meteor, which activates on lucky hit. And we have a bunch of barriers. We have two barriers. We have this aspect of the protector here that grants you a barrier when you hit an elite enemy. And then we have that talent that whenever we hit a cooldown, it grants us a barrier for 30% of our health. So that works for teleport and also Inferno. So we're activating barriers off of those. And then if we swap this out in the endgame for Frost Nova, that's yet another barrier generation. So we're going to have a lot of barriers up, and this is going to be active hopefully a lot of the time. And then we have Smiting Access because this is a crit/burn build. So you have 10 to 20% increased critical chance against injured enemies. And while you're healthy, you gain increased crowd control duration, which is meh, but we really want the critical strike stuff. Then we have Aspect of Protector, which whenever we meet an elite enemy, we get the barrier. That's good. This just gives us some movement speed. Now, there are a couple other things that give us movement speed, and you get crit based off your movement speed, but I don't know how viable that is because it seems to be small amounts. So for now, I just said screw that and went with this movement speed one just to have some movement speed in our build. So that's wonderful. Then we have Aspect of Three Curses, which Meteor deals increased critical strike damage against healthy enemies. So yeah, big damage increase. Wonderful. Although, if I'm in a group, I don't know how often enemies are going to be healthy, so maybe that's not going to end up being one of the endgame choices, Who knows? But that is a lot of increased damage. It depends, again, how often we can reliably proc Meteor at the beginning of fights. Like, if we can't do it very reliably, then obviously this is going to swap to something else, because it's not giving us any benefits. Weapon. Oh, that was a weapon. Offhand, I did not do a two-hand version right now because I think we're going to want the extra aspect that comes from wielding a weapon in an offhand. In the slam, we were wielding two-hand, but that's just because two-hand was better at level 20, and that probably won't necessarily be true at level 100. So, while enemies are affected by more damage over time than their total health, you gain 20 to 30% increased burn damage to them. So, you can see that there's two health bars on enemies, essentially. There's like a big health bar, and then there's a shaded health bar. And the shaded health bar is how much dot damage the enemy has taken. And so, very often, I found that enemies during the slam, I was dealing a heck of a lot of damage to them, and they were like half their bar was shaded, like half their bar was burn damage. So when that activates, you deal 30% increased burning damage to them. The other thing is that this sounds like it activates when other classes are doing this. So, for example, I was playing with a friend in the slam, and he was a bleed barbarian, and he was doing bleed damage, like a hell of a lot of bleed damage, and like the entire enemy's health bar was doing this at like instantly for all enemies that we fought. So basically this would be a 30 to 40% damage increase guaranteed when you're with a bleed barbarian or someone else that has bleeds. I don't know if any other classes do, but again, this is one of those things that is synergistic with other classes, and I like that aspect of Diablo. I think it's a very good aspect. And then we have this for some mana regen. Again, I don't know if this will end up being necessary. I don't know how mana regen really works because we couldn't really complete a build in either of the betas. So until we get everything up and going, we don't really know how our mana looks, how our mana regen looks. So for now, I have this to hopefully give us back some mana. I mean, 5 to 10% chance to restore 10 mana, and then of course we have Armor of Fortune with our barriers to increase lucky hits. So, we got some synergies going on between the stuff. Aspect of Shattered Stars, this is going to be a mainstay as long as you're running Meteor Lucky Hit because it drops more meteors. Now, I'm not impressed with the graphic of meteors in Diablo 4. I think it's too small, and I think it's whatever. I like the graphic animation in Diablo 3 better, just because I don't know. You can fill your screen with it. It's fun. Blah 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 blah. Whatever. But this is going to be a mainstay because it adds meteorites. It's basically like Meteor Shower. If you play Diablo 3, Meteor Shower is a rune and an enhancement for Mempo of Twilight, and it basically drops meteors all over the screen. So that's exactly what I love doing with a wizard. That's partly why I'm going with this build, because that's what I always love doing with the wizard. So, and then they burn enemies, and that's wonderful. And then we have Conceited Aspect, because I figure as long as we're going with all these barriers, then, you deal more damage when you have a barrier active. Sounds good to me. It's flat damage increase. Why not? And also, it's plus 50% on the amulet, so I guess that's the 25% part. I don't know how that actually works. So this may not be the only way to set these things up. This is just the way I found that currently works, so I could get them all on my gear. For some other ones, there's things that affect attack speed, like Isu's Ferocity, but I don't know how valuable attack speed is. So I can't really say. Aspect of Armageddon, meteors fall during Inferno. I don't think that's really worthwhile because Inferno doesn't have a large uptime, although it does immobilize enemies. So maybe if you need some burst damage or some single target on a boss, maybe you might want to swap in Aspect of Armageddon. Have another piece of gear with Aspect of Armageddon on it. Flame Shield, unhindered through enemies, are immobilized 2 to 3 seconds. I don't think that's very good. Conflagration, that's Incinerate, blah, blah, blah. Don't care. I did consider this one. You deal 30% to 40 or 30 to 40% more damage to immobilize stunned or frozen enemies. So that could be better than the barrier one. We could swap this out if we don't need mana regen. There's other things. And this is all predicated on the fact that, maybe we have to go more defensive. But right now I'm going offensive. Maybe we need more defenses at the end game, and we'll have to sub a couple of these out for things like the mana or the armor one right here. But again, don't know yet because we haven't played the end game. So, basic skills grant 20% damage reduction, blah, 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 blah. Currents. What the hell is currents? Oh, that's a lightning thing. Retribution. Meh. Meh. I mean, this is for spreading crowd control, and maybe that has some synergies, but I don't know. I don't think so. After immobilized wears off, enemies are slowed. Don't care about that. Static cling, bounding conduit, nah. 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 Deep freeze, nah. Broken tether, nah. This one might be good. I don't know if this counts as a barrier. So, I mean, if it resets a defensive skill, then we get a barrier up. But if it doesn't count while you have a barrier up, then it's not that good because we're planning to have barriers up. So who knows? Okay, we have core and mastery skills at or above 100 mana, gain increased critical strike chance. Depending on how mana regen works, again, like if we're at 100 mana a lot, then that's going to be good. Hang on, I got to mute somebody. Like screaming in my freaking voice chat and I can't hear anything else. Okay. Anyway. And then I talk louder and I don't want to talk louder. So that's some things about the aspects. Things could change. But that's what I'm going with so far from what I know. And then we get to the Paragon board. And oh my god. Complicated. Now, I don't actually like this layout. I much prefer the other layout of the Paragon board on the other website. But swapping things over is a pain. Again, this is assuming that we're going offensive. The one thing I will say is these stats, like for what I've built here, we need a lot more dex and we need a lot more willpower. But I don't know the final stats on gear at the moment, so I don't know whether we'll even be able to reach these things. So, this build may change a lot, because if we can't get the bonuses to activate the rare nodes that we need, then there's no point in getting those rare nodes in the first place, and I'll have to spend some points elsewhere to make sure that we're getting the ones we can, and maybe throw another glyph in there instead of some more rare nodes. So again, it'll depend on what's possible for gear. But this is the basic starting board. We're going non-physical damage, 10 intelligence, non-physical damage, 10 intelligence. Again, if we need defenses, we might have to swap some things up, because there's resistances in life here. But again, not knowing how much resistances we're going to need or the final values on stuff, it's pretty hard to tell. So it'll be a wait and see thing. The first glyph I think is worth getting is Adept, and again, I could be completely wrong on this, but it sure sounds good. Mastery skills gain 3% increased damage. So mastery skills are our main damage dealers, except Fireball. Fireball is a core skill. But we've got Firewall and we've got Meteor. Those are both mastery skills. So we've got mastery skills have 20% increased area, and for every 5 intelligence, they deal 3% increased damage. So we've got 40 intelligence there. And so we've got 8, so that's 21 increased damage for our mastery skills. So that's nothing to sneeze at, I feel. And then, of course, they have increased area, which is great for Fireball and Meteor, because more area, they hit more things. So I picked up all the intelligence ones around here, which ends up being 40. Oh, I guess I'm missing one. Whatever. I'm missing 2. That's terrible. Okay, so we can get even more damage on it should we choose, but I don't have any points to spend on it again. So after that, we add the Burning Instinct. And again, this may change depending on what happens, but add Burning Instinct, and we go over here and we get Smoldering Embers and Cinders. So we get damage reduction. This is why I feel we might not need resistances, because we're getting a bunch of damage reduction, but we'll see. Then we got 2.5% increased damage per nearby burning enemies, up to 12.5%. Requires 25 willpower. So we've got willpower here, willpower there, some more willpower. So there's like 30 something willpower there, so that's good. Then we go in the middle here to get Kindling, which is again more damage to burning enemies and damage to elites. So that's wonderful. And then we've got Keeper of Flames, which gives us some fire resistance and resistance for stuff that's burning. And then we head over here to our board attachment, and we get Searing Heat. Oh, and forgot the legendary node, Burning Instinct. Burning damage is increased by 40% of your critical strike damage, further increased 5% for every 20 intelligence you have. So yeah, we have a lot of intelligence. We have 470. That's not the maximum amount of intelligence we can have, because we're getting some other stats, but whatever. So then we go over here to Pyromancy, which is damage over time and flat fire damage. Wonderful. Then we go to the legendary node, Searing Heat, which is casting Fireball or Meteor, gives increased critical strike chance, which is wonderful. So additional 15%. I wonder if a lucky hit, it should count as a cast. Maybe Searing Heat is useless. Who knows? I don't think it's useless, because other people were getting searing heat. So, yeah, whatever. Rare node combustion, so critical strike damage, which folds right back into this, and fire damage. Wonderful. Then we head down for the glyph slot, and here we get tactician. Now I've heard that glyphs were nerfed, but I can't affect the level on this particular one. Like the other builder that I was using allows you to crank up the level to 20 to see it. It ends up being like 240%. But I have heard that glyphs have been nerfed via data mine. So people have been data mining stuff, and glyphs are apparently nerfed. A lot of glyphs are apparently nerfed. So I have no idea what the values are going to be anymore. But this increases the value of the rare nodes, so this would go up to 240%, and this would go up to 240%, which ends up being like 34% fire damage and 41% fire resistance. So, and as you can see right now, we don't have the extra requirements met, and again, how many like rare nodes we end up getting will depend on how much we can increase this for gear, because this doesn't show any gear stats. So if you can get a bunch of stats of willpower and dexterity from your gear, then you can get some more rare nodes, which is what I think is going to happen. And even at level 20 and 25, it was possible to get like 30, 35 willpower on a two-hander. So I'm assuming that overall on your gear, you're going to be able to get at least, at 100 stats to whatever thing you're targeting. So those should be no problem to get as we get stats for our gear. Okay, and then we go to Ceaseless Conduit. Now the reason we go to Ceaseless Conduit, which is lightning, is this rare node over here called Hunter Killer, which is flat damage to elites and some movement speed after killing elites. And then the bonus, as you can see, is 440 dexterity, which I don't know if is reachable. Excuse me. Sorry, so I don't know if 440 dexterity is reachable, and if that's not reasonably achieved, then this whole Paragon board is going to have to change, because Hunter Killer will have to be back on the first or second um, board so that we can actually get to it and get this bonus, because this is one of the best rare nodes in the game, and only us and rogues have access to it. Only sorcerers and rogues have access to this. So if we can't reasonably get 440 dexterity, then, maybe we can switch our glyphs up and this ends up becoming a lesser requirement because one of the other glyphs switches to intelligence or something. But in this current setup, we need 440 dexterity, and if that's not reasonably attainable, then something's got to change, because this will be a mainstay in pretty much every Sorc build. Okay, then after that, we go back down here. We get some damage to elites, which is wonderful. And then we go down here to get the board attachment. And here we're getting Enchantment Master. And that's the legendary node over here, which your enhancements are 20% stronger. So that would mean over here on gears and skills, now 20% of 5 is obviously meh. So I don't know what exactly it changes, but like the lucky chance would go up to 10 or something like that. 20% of 8, 2, 1 point, I don't know. So maybe 10% on that, whatever. This might not even be worth getting, is the point. But for now, that's what I'm getting. There might be something else that's better. Wait a minute, where did we go? Oh, it put me all the way back on the top. Okay, so this is where we were. So this is the final Paragon board, because I don't have any points, obviously. So I went over here for an Enchantment Master, just because it looks good on the surface. It was possible to reach the glyph, which is down here, if you did not go for Enhancement Master and a lot of this. So maybe getting another glyph socket is the way to go. Who knows? So that would be another glyph slot. But I chose to go for the rare nodes. Again, Depending on how many stats we end up getting from gear, this may not be feasible at all. The, or at least the willpower one might not be feasible. But again, it's non-physical damage, damage to elites, and then non-physical damage, intelligence. So if we could go back and get some rare nodes with maybe intelligence requirements instead. Oh no, that one's a willpower. And that one's a dexterity, so meh. But anyway, that's the current layout of the Paragon board. So again, it all depends on how things change once the game is actually live and we're actually doing things. But I've heard again that all the glyphs have been nerfed except the conjuration glyph, which stayed the same, which is kind of meh because there really is no conjuration build for Sorks except for an offshoot build. But this is the first build that I'm going with is Burn Sork, so that's what I'm concentrating on. So that's the Paragon board in reverse. Why isn't it moving? There we go. And because of those dex and willpower requirements, there's a couple places where I could have taken intelligence where I opted to take dexterity and strength, or not strength, strength sucks, where I opted to take dexterity and willpower instead just to try and get a little more of that. So that is the build for now. I have a feeling we'll end up needing more defenses, so I'll probably have to drop some of this in order to get some defensive nodes here or there, but hell, I'm a wizard. I'm an offensive maniac. So that is where we're at for now. And it shows our final stats without gear, which doesn't really tell us anything. So we've got damage reduction from burning, which is 20%, 20% speed on an elite kill, which is nice, even though it doesn't last very long. Mana regen. Really? That's how that works? That can't be right. 0.317 mana regen per second? If that's true, mana regen is garbage. Anyway, got some vulnerable damage. Where did I get vulnerable damage? Oh, base value. Ha ha ha. Damage versus elites, 88.3. Seems pretty good to me. Critical strike damage is low. Critical strike chance is only 10%. But again, we don't know what we can get with gear, and we have a lot that affect, like depending on the health of the enemy and our talents, which aren't factored in. So I've heard on the high end you can get like 30%, but that wasn't including the bonuses. So, a decent chance, reasonable chance. But yeah, that is my Sork build so far. And I hope you guys like it and maybe learn something. If you have something to tell me, then go ahead. This video will be up on YouTube. So same name as here on Twitch. And you guys can comment and we can learn things and we can have fun. And yeah. So that is my Burn Sork for now. And I am going to go end this and put it on YouTube. Yeah, thanks, Lee. We're going to be streaming a lot of Diablo 4 once it launches. That's basically what's going to be happening. I don't know if I'll finish Octopath Traveler or not before then, but yeah. We're going to be streaming Diablo 4 when it launches. So, yep. So with that done, I'm going to go get something to eat for now, and I'll be back a little bit later. But again, this will be on YouTube if you want to peruse it and see all the skill tree stuff. Just go over it so people can see it. And then the Paragon tree again. So it goes basic board, Burning Instinct, Searing Heat, Ceaseless Conduit, and Enchantment Master, which may or may not be necessary. Maybe we'll only have to go with these. But, yep. That's it for now. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you again in a little while.